Hey A&Pers, this is Dr. Jones checking in. This is A&P1 lecture test for video 7 on page 8, I think. Going with it. Okay, so, excuse me, so this is what page 8 looks like in my formatting. This is what you're looking for. All right. Okay, story. My daughter and I have this thing where when we have work to do, we pass the dog back and forth because all too often we find ourselves carrying the dog. So when one of us has to do something, we like hand the dog to the other person. And a few minutes ago, she had handed me the dog, but I wanted to come do this video. So I set the dog down and I was like, oh no, Pepper's feet have touched the floor. Whatever will we do? And my daughter's like, oh no. My husband is like 6'6" and the tiny little 6-pound dog. And he's like, are you okay, Pepper? You gonna be all right? So that's what passes for family humor at my house. Yeah. Having a good time during COVID times. Oh, hello, that turns the page. Okay, so neuromuscular junction. The motor neuron tells the muscle cell to contract at the neuromuscular junction. Colored blue doesn't show well against the blue. I bet the green will show. Oh yeah. Also, I have hot coffee now. Nectar of the gods. Okay, each muscle cell, oh, this is abbreviated, sorry, N, what's on an N? MJ, neuromuscular junction, NMJ. I think my grandma's father knows him. Okay, each muscle cell only has one neuromuscular junction, although a single axon may control many muscle fibers, and in fact does, and there's a term for that, which we will get to, but not today. We've got lots to do on this video. Okay, so here you see the action potential traveling down the axon, and it gets to the axon terminal, synaptic terminal, synaptic knob, they all mean the same thing. There are lots of them in each neuromuscular junction. And then it releases a chemical, as I told you in the last video, and that it binds to a chemically gated ion channel, and that starts in the motor end plate, and that starts the muscle action potential. So that's your overview of what you're about to learn. We're about to add a boatload of new terms to it. So a buttload is an actual measure of volume. They used to have like actual barrels, like a barrel of monkeys, but like an actual barrel. A barrel was a measure of volume. And there were bigger barrels that held, I don't remember how many, like a number of barrels. And that was called a butt, a B-U-T-T. So you could have a buttload of wine, which was way more than a barrel of wine or cider or whatever it is. So buttload is a technical, historical measure of volume. Plus it sounds fun. So number 1. The axon ends at a synaptic knob, synaptic terminal, axon terminal. Yes, those are all the same thing. Those are different terms for the same structure. And on this picture, this bit right here is the synaptic knob. And it communicates with a specialized area of the sarcolemma called the motor end plate, which is separated from the synaptic knob by the synaptic cleft. Like a cleft chin. When my son was born, the midwife said, oh, he's got a cleft chin just like yours. And I said, I have a cleft chin? didn't know. Okay, so this is going to be our motor end plate, and the gap in between is the synaptic cleft. So this is part of the nerve cell, and this part is the muscle cell. And the gap between the nerve, the synaptic cleft, the synaptic knob, which is part of the nerve cell, and the motor end plate, which is part of the muscle cell. So the gap between the nerve cell and the muscle cell is the synaptic cleft. Okay. The synaptic knob contains chemicals. Okay, now we're going to learn the name of the chemical. It's a type of neurotransmitter. We're not going to learn lots of the neurotransmitters, but a neurotransmitter is a chemical released by the neuro. Okay, and this one is acetylcholine. It's abbreviated capital A, capital C, lowercase h, and it is spelled ACETYLCHOLINE, acetylcholine. The motor end plate contains acetylcholine receptors, which are these little things right here. Acetylcholine receptors. And the synaptic cleft contains the enzyme acetylcholinesterase, which is an enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine. So that is spelled ACETYLCHOLINESTERASE, acetylcholinesterase, which you won't need to spell on the lecture test. So, but you do need to be able to read the word acetylcholine as different from the word acetylcholinesterase. So I do want to bring your attention to this ASE at the end. ASE is always an enzyme, and it's generally an enzyme that destroys whatever came in front of it. So acetylcholinesterase is the enzyme that destroys acetylcholine. If you're lactose intolerant, you might take lactase, that's an S, which is the enzyme that breaks down lactose. OSE is sugar, ASE is an enzyme that destroys whatever's in front of that. Okay. You can hear my dog because my father-in-law just showed with his brother. So next, the stimulus for acetylcholine release is the muscle action potential. I'm sorry, the nerve action potential. DERB? I was like, that sounds weird. Let me check that. Yeah, it was wrong, man. Solid wrong. Okay, so the nerve action potential right here makes these acetylcholines release, and then you get acetylcholine everywhere. I should have switched to red. That's how that works.
Where's the dog at?
I'm recording. Sorry. Okay. This causes the exocytosis of ACH into the synaptic cleft. So that's how that works. And so then you get, we're switching to red. Acetylcholine everywhere in the synaptic cleft. Okay, what do you think is going to happen next? That's right, the acetylcholine is going to bind to acetylcholine receptors next. Acetylcholine diffuses across the synaptic cleft and binds to receptors on the motor end plate. The motor end plate is part of the muscle cell. It's a specialized area of sarcolemma, and it's specialized in that it has acetylcholine receptors. These receptors are chemically gated sodium ion channels. When acetylcholine binds to the receptors, they open to allow sodium ions. Okay, so this is sometimes confusing because acetylcholine binds to the chemically gated ion receptor, but it does not cross the membrane. For me, this is like the Heide key. You have a Heide key outside your place somewhere, under a pot, on top of the door, under the mat, in the fake dog poop. The fake rocks are not. Fake dog poop, maybe. Okay, so if you lose your key and you use your Heide key to get inside the house, you use the Heide key to unlock the door and open the door. Do you ever once allow that Heide key to go inside the house? Oh, heck no, because you will lose it and you'll never be able to get into your house when you lose your keys again, right? So the Heide key unlocks the door and goes straight back into that fake dog poop so that it will be there the next time you need it. The Heide key unlocks the door, you go through the door. The Heide key never, ever goes in the door, ever. Or you will never get into your house again. Okay. Maybe that's just me. So what opens the gate? Acetylcholine. What crosses? What goes in the house? What goes in the muscle cell? Sodium ions. And there's an Na superscript plus. Okay, capital N, lowercase a, superscript plus, sodium. Ooh, does that make sodium a cation or an anion? That's right, it's a cation. Okay, next, is this number 5? The inrush of positively charged sodium ions changes the transmembrane potential of the muscle cell, starting the muscle action potential, which propagates down the entire sarcolemma. What was sarcolemma? The muscle cell membrane. And around each zone of overlap via the transverse tubules. Meanwhile, the ACHE, acetylcholinesterase, breaks down the ACH, the acetylcholine, into acetate and choline, acetylcholine. It's literally named for its 2 parts, acetate and choline stuck together. Acetylcholinesterase breaks the connection between the acetate and the choline. We'll talk for test 5 about what happens to the acetate and the choline, but for now it breaks down. The action potential generated, oh, that's the next page. Okay, go back. Maybe. No, there we go. The action potential generated at the motor end plate now sweeps across the sarcolemma. Didn't I already say that? Oh, and the effects are brief because the ACHE eats the ACH. In fact, the book says that of all the acetylcholine released, and each of these synaptic vesicles contain like 300 molecules of acetylcholine. So we're releasing 300 from each synaptic vesicle. But only half of it ever reaches the motor end plate because the ACHE eats half of it before it can even cross. So, all right, let's briefly completely redo this. now that we've gotten all of that written down, let's draw. Okay, so you have a nerve cell. And there's an axon. And specifically, this is going to be a motor neuron. And here's the axon, which ends at a axon terminal, also called a synaptic nub. Okay, in each axon terminal are bubbles called synaptic vesicles. That contain lots and lots of ACH. Okay, and then there's a gap called the synaptic cleft. And on the other end, other side, not what I wanted. At least it didn't erase it. I wanted pink. Give me pink. Okay. On the other side is the pink wiggle squiggle. Okay, so this is the muscle cell. And the cell membrane of the muscle cell is the sarcolemma. And the squiggly bit of the sarcolemma is the motor end plate. Which is a specialized area of sarcolemma. And it's specialized in that it has they were sort of gray in the picture. Let's go with gray. Acetylcholine receptors. Now, acetylcholine receptors are ion channels, gated ion channels. If what opens them is a molecule of acetylcholine, is it an electrically gated, a voltage gated ion channel, or is it a chemically gated ion channel? Acetylcholine is a molecule, so it's chemically gated. Okay, so these are chemically gated ion channels, and what ions do they allow to cross? Remember, ion channels have specificity. Sodium. They allow sodium ions to cross. Okay, so let's go back to red. Can I get the color, please? I really want to change the color. Thanks. Okay, so the motor neuron decides it's time for this muscle to move. So it sends a nerve action potential. It sends a nap? I want a nap. It sends a nerve action potential to which causes the exocytosis of the acetylcholine from the synaptic vesicles to the synaptic cleft. And actually, a few years ago, a small group of people got a Nobel Prize for figuring out exactly how the nerve action potential causes the exocytosis of the neurotransmitter into the synaptic cleft. Fun, right? I didn't read it. I know it happens. We'll cover a bit more detail on how that happens in chapter 5 when we do all of this again. Test 5 when we do all of this again, but not Nobel Prize winning detail. Basic concepts. AMP1. Basic concepts. Okay, so some of this acetylcholine will get destroyed by the, I can draw bananas, acetylcholinesterase. So the ACHE eats half of the ACH as it crosses the synaptic cleft, breaking it down into its constituent parts of acetate and choline. It's probably not actually banana shaped, but it's the shape they're going with in the book, and so we're just sticking with it for simplicity's sake. Okay, back to red. So acetylcholine binds to the acetylcholine receptors. And remember, the acetylcholine is the hide key. It opens, it unlocks the door. It does not go in the door. The acetylcholine stays in the synaptic cleft. Something else entirely enters the cell. What enters the cell? Sodium. And sodium, we decided, was a cation because it has a positive charge. Now, one thing we know about cells is that the inside of the cell is relatively negative, and the outside of the cell is relatively positive. And now we're we're allowing positive ions inside the cell. So we're making the inside of the muscle cell less negative. And that is a change in the transmembrane potential. And a change, the triangle, the Greek letter delta means change. The change in the transmembrane potential is an action potential. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. So I'll leave it there for now. But this is how it works. The motor neuron sends a message in the form of electrical activity. The electrical activity causes a release of chemicals. What chemical? Acetylcholine. Into where do they go? Into the synaptic cleft, which is the gap, the space between the nerve cell and the muscle cell. Okay, so the motor neuron's electrical activity causes a chemical to be released into the synaptic cleft. The chemical binds to chemically gated ion channels. Chemicals acetylcholine binds to acetylcholine receptors, which are chemically gated sodium ion channels. And sodium rushes in to the cells. Sodium, like fools, rush in. Did we talk about that? Because there's more sodium outside the cell than inside the cell, plus the sodium is positive, so it's attracted to the negative inside. We will if we haven't. So sodium, like fools, rush in. Anytime you open a sodium ion channel, sodium always rushes into the cell. I don't have an exception for you. Just as far as I know, always. Okay. And that makes the inside of the cell less negative. The fact that the inside of the cell is negative compared to the outside is the transmembrane potential. We have altered the transmembrane potential. When you change the transmembrane potential, that is an action potential. All right. I promise I'd leave you with that. So this has been ANP1 lecture test for page 8, so video 7. Thank you as always for tuning in. The education must go on. Dr. J out.